Mont Blanc Tunnel Fire. On March 24, 1999, inside the Mont Blanc Tunnel, a 7.5-mile passage cut through the Alps to link France and Italy. It was late morning, and traffic flowed normally through the single-bore tunnel. A Belgian-driven refrigerated transport truck, a Volvo carrying flour and margarine, entered from the French side near Chamonix and rolled into the long, dark corridor. Other drivers shared the road around it, cars and trucks moving in both directions through the narrow space. Without warning, white smoke began pouring from the truck. The driver braked to a stop roughly halfway through the tunnel, and the cargo ignited. The fire spread fast to nearby vehicles. Drivers behind found themselves trapped because the single lane gave them no way to turn around. Toxic smoke, heavy with hydrogen cyanide from the burning margarine and truck materials, filled the passage and blotted out the air. Temperatures climbed toward 1,000 degrees Celsius. People who left their cars to reach the refuge bays were overcome within minutes. 29 of them died inside their vehicles, and 9 more died trying to flee on foot. Firefighters pushing in from both portals were driven back by the heat and smoke, and some became trapped themselves. The fire burned for 53 hours before crews could finally extinguish it. The exact ignition source was never fully settled. Investigators traced it to the truck, linking it to a source in the engine area, while one account pointed to a cigarette stub drawn into the air filter snorkel above the cab. A second failure made the disaster far worse. Operators pumped fresh air in from the Italian side, feeding oxygen to the blaze and pushing the toxic smoke back toward the people still trapped inside. The Belgian truck driver, who survived, received a 4-month suspended sentence. The disaster forced a complete redesign of European tunnel safety standards, and the Mont Blanc Tunnel stayed closed for 3 years. One man became the face of the tragedy. Pierlucio Tonazzi, an Italian security guard, rode his motorcycle into the burning tunnel again and again, pulling roughly 10 people to safety before he was overcome on a final run. He was honored afterward for the lives he saved. Caldecott Tunnel Inferno. Just after midnight on April 7, 1982, in the third bore of the Caldecott Tunnel on California State Route 24 between Oakland and Orinda, traffic was light at that hour. Janice Arlene Ferris, a 34-year-old bookkeeper from San Leandro, was driving her Honda Civic westbound through the tunnel. Somewhere inside the bore, she lost control, struck a curb, and stalled in the traffic lane, leaving her car dead in the road. A gasoline double tanker truck carrying about 8,800 gallons of fuel came in behind her, followed by an AC transit bus. The tanker struck the disabled Honda, and the bus collided too, throwing its driver from the vehicle. The ruptured tanker spilled gasoline that caught and turned into a fireball racing through the tunnel. 7 people died. Among them were Ferris, an elderly couple trapped in their car, the bus driver, 2 men in a beer truck, and a woman caught by the flash of flame. The fire burned for between 28 and 40 minutes, consuming most of the gasoline before crews could bring it under control. Ferris was found to have a blood alcohol concentration of 0.17, more than twice the legal limit, which explained the loss of control that began the chain reaction. In response, California passed a law banning gasoline tanker trucks from the Caldecott Tunnel, except during early morning, low traffic hours. Sasago Tunnel ceiling collapse. At about 8 in the morning on December 2, 2012, in the Tokyo-bound bore of the Sasago Tunnel on the Chuo Expressway, roughly 50 miles west of Tokyo in Yamanashi Prefecture, morning traffic moved steadily through the nearly 3-mile tunnel. Several vehicles were inside the bore, among them a van carrying 6 people. Without warning, roughly 150 concrete ceiling panels began to fall. Each slab was about 8 inches thick and weighed around 1 1/3 tons. The panels crushed 3 vehicles across a stretch of 50 to 60 meters, and the van caught fire beneath the fallen concrete. 9 people were killed, 6 of them in the burning van, and 2 others were injured. Rescue crews worked beneath the unstable remaining ceiling to reach the crushed vehicles and recover the dead. Emergency inspections afterward found defects in hundreds of places. The bolts fixing the ceiling panels to the tunnel were loose or corroded in roughly 630 locations, pointing to years of slow deterioration in the suspension hardware. Several executives of the operator, Nexco Central, were referred to prosecutors on suspicion of negligence, but in 2018, prosecutors decided not to pursue charges and the case was dropped. Tauern Tunnel fire. At about 10 minutes to 5 on the morning of May 29, 1999, deep inside the Tauern Road Tunnel on the A10 Autobahn in western Austria, a line of vehicles sat stopped at a temporary traffic signal set up for road work. A truck loaded with paint was bearing down on the stationary column of cars from behind. The driver failed to stop in time and slammed into the back of the waiting vehicles. The collision set off a chain reaction of explosions that drew in as many as 60 vehicles. Spilled fuel and the hazardous paint cargo fed a massive blaze that filled the tunnel. 8 people were killed by the force of the collision itself, and 4 more died in the fire that followed. 42 others were injured. Rescue crews fought intense heat and smoke as they worked to reach survivors and recover the dead from the burning pileup. Coming only months after Mont Blanc, the disaster drove sweeping revisions to Austrian tunnel safety guidelines. Gotthard Road Tunnel Fire. On October 24, 2001, inside the Gotthard Road Tunnel beneath the Swiss Alps, within about a kilometer of the southern portal near Airolo. The 10-mile tunnel carried two-way traffic in a single bore. 2 heavy goods trucks were traveling through the tunnel toward each other. One of them drifted across the center line, and the 2 collided sideways. A short circuit ignited the diesel-air mixture, and the trucks and their cargo, including hundreds of tires, burst into flames. Within minutes, the temperature passed 1,000 degrees Celsius, and thick, toxic smoke filled the tunnel faster than people could escape. 11 people died. The ventilation system, never built to handle a fully developed truck fire, spread the smoke along the bore instead of pulling it out, cutting off visibility and oxygen for everyone trying to flee. The Gotthard Road Tunnel stayed closed for 2 months, and the disaster pushed European tunnel safety policy towards stricter fire management and traffic spacing rules. Nihonzaka Tunnel Fire. At around 20 to 7 in the evening on July 11, 1979, on the Nagoya-bound line of the Tomei Expressway inside the Nihonzaka Tunnel in Shizuoka Prefecture. The fatal spot lay roughly 400 meters from the tunnel exit. A large truck with an Osaka license plate was moving through the bore behind another large truck. The Osaka truck collided with the one ahead of it, triggering a multi-vehicle crash that pulled in 4 big trucks and 2 passenger cars. Fuel ignited, and the fire spread fast to the vehicles stopped behind. As more cars piled up, the flames jumped from one to the next. 4 people were killed instantly in the crash, and 3 more were burned to death when they could not escape their cars. 2 others were injured. The fire eventually consumed 173 cars and took roughly 65 hours to extinguish, making it one of the worst tunnel fires in Japanese history. The shutdown of the Tokyo to Nagoya artery rippled across the region, halting deliveries and even stalling some auto production lines for lack of parts. The disaster reshaped how Japan planned for fire inside its expressway tunnels. Frejus Tunnel Fire. On June 4, 2005, inside the Frejus Road Tunnel, an 8-mile passage under the Alps that linked Modane in France with Bardonecchia in Italy, it was the main alpine route, while the lessons of Mont Blanc were still fresh. A line of heavy trucks moved through the tunnel from the French side. One truck, coming from France, stopped about 3 miles in, and a second truck nearby, carrying mozzarella cheese, burst into flames. The fire spread from one vehicle to the next, jumping to a truck carrying scrap, then to a truck loaded with toxic glue farther back. The temperature climbed towards 1,650 degrees Celsius. 2 truck drivers, one from Slovakia and one from Slovenia, were killed. Firefighters battled the blaze for about 7 hours, and 3 Italian firefighting vehicles were lost inside the tunnel. The fire revived alarm about alpine tunnel safety, just 6 years after Mont Blanc, and it prompted renewed scrutiny of fire response and ventilation across the cross-border tunnels. Holland Tunnel Fire. At about 8:30 in the morning on May 13, 1949, inside the southern tube of the Holland Tunnel, the eastbound passage running under the Hudson River between New Jersey and New York City. Morning traffic was heavy and slow through the tube. A truck loaded with 80 55-gallon drums of carbon disulfide, a highly flammable industrial chemical, had pushed deep into the line of vehicles. About 2,900 feet in, one of the drums broke free and cracked open. The escaping vapor ignited when it touched a hot surface, most likely a brake shoe or an exhaust pipe. Fire erupted in the crowded tube. Roughly 350 feet farther west, a second fire broke out among vehicles carrying paint and turpentine, set off by the hot smoke rolling down the tunnel. The extract fans pulled air through at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Motorists were guided out through cross passages into the northern tube, and remarkably, not a single driver was killed. 66 people were injured, most from smoke inhalation, and 27 were hospitalized. 2 men died. Samuel Williams Sr., a laborer from Philadelphia, died the day of the fire, and Battalion Chief Gunther Beek of the New York Fire Department, badly hurt by smoke, died of his injuries that August. The truck driver faced only misdemeanor charges, and the following year, the trucking company was formally banned from the tunnel. Kaprun funicular fire. Shortly after 9 in the morning on November 11, 2000, inside the ascending tunnel of the Kaprun Glacier funicular, climbing toward the Kitzsteinhorn ski slopes in the Austrian Alps, the train pulled away from the lower station at 2 minutes past 9, packed with skiers heading up for the day. More than 160 passengers and a conductor rode the funicular car bound for the glacier. About 600 meters into the steep tunnel, the train suddenly stopped. A fan heater in the conductor's compartment, never designed for a moving vehicle, had overheated and set fire to a slow leak of flammable hydraulic fluid. The fire took hold at the rear of the car. The sealed mountainside tunnel began acting like a chimney, drawing oxygen up from below and driving smoke, heat, and flame up the shaft. Most of the passengers tried to climb upward through the tunnel toward the upper station, straight into the rising smoke, and were overtaken. 155 people died, the vast majority of them by asphyxiation. Among the dead was 19-year-old Sandra Schmidt, the reigning women's dual moguls world champion. When rescuers reached the scene, they found a mass casualty disaster with only 12 survivors. Every one of those 12 had broken a window with a ski pole and fled downhill, past the fire, against the smoke. The official inquiry concluded that the cause was the failure and overheating of an electric heater that was never intended for use in a moving car, igniting the leaking hydraulic fluid. The safety gaps were severe. The fire extinguishers were sealed inside the attendant compartments, out of the passengers' reach. There were no smoke detectors on board, and the passengers had no way to contact the attendant. On February 19, 2004, a judge acquitted all 16 defendants, including company officials, technicians, and government inspectors, citing insufficient evidence of criminal negligence. The funicular was never reopened. It was dismantled and replaced with a modern gondola lift, and Kaprun remains the deadliest ski transport disaster in history. If you appreciate documentation like this, consider subscribing, and tell me what to cover next in the comments.